to another episode of the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Fry. This week I have an interview between Journal Commerce staff writer Russell Hixson and Dave Earle, who's the president and CEO of the BC Trucking Association. Together they're going to explore how the recent disasters in BC have affected both trucking and movement of construction materials, and even before the BC floods, how labor shortages, logistics, and the pandemic has made it much more difficult for delivery of construction materials and other goods to sites. Without any further ado, here is Russell's interview.
With some of these, horrible storms and all these routes damaged, I was just hoping you could kind of tell me a bit of the story from your perspective of what happened. I'm sure you in the industry deals with, impacts to highways here and there, but this seems to be different.
Yeah, we've been absolutely hammered. So I'll give you the Coles notes.
Sure.
When Highway 1, 5, and 3 went, I should back up. Highway 99 is not really a commercial route. It's restricted for basically straight trucks. Mm-hmm. It's just not suitable for anything big. The corners are too tight. The mountains are too steep. So really we have three routes, 1, 5, and 3.
Yeah.
We were seeing on average, this is a yearly average. It's a little lower in the wintertime, higher in the summer. But we were seeing about 6,000 moves a day, east-west.
What's a move? Sorry, I'm kind of a layman.
Yeah, well, that's a truck. So that's 6,000 commercial vehicles passing through those corridors on any given day. When 1, 5, and 3 went down, we lost about 80% of that capacity.
Wow.
So when 1 and 5 went down. Highway 3 averages about 800 moves a day. So that peaks in the summertime around 1,200, and it's just not equipped to handle that level of traffic. Mm-hmm. So what's happened when it's been open 24 hours, we're seeing in the 1,200 to 1,500 moves, so we're above summer peak. Mm-hmm. It's challenging, and it's taking a long time. So in an effort to figure out what to do, the United States has been unbelievably cooperative. They have waived a whole bunch of their laws, not everything by any stretch. Right. They've removed a lot of barriers to allow carriers to start moving across the United States, and we're seeing that volume grow. These are called in-transit moves. So you're not actually beginning or ending in the States, you're just driving through. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing those climb into about 200 a day. So you can do that just like me, and by the time we look at all that, we're still way, way down, mm-hmm. like thousands a day down. What's happening is it's taking a phenomenal amount of time to make these journeys. So before, you could have a truck running from a distribution center in Langley, drive to Kelowna. It takes about 6 hours in a commercial vehicle. They unload, hitch up to the next trailer, and drive back. And right. So in a 12-hour day, they could do what we call a rounder. A trip one way to Kelowna now is taking about 12 hours.
Wow.
So what that means is the individual's in the truck for 12 hours, then they have to overnight, and then they drive back for 12 hours, and then they overnight, and then they drive back. So when you're looking at any type of efficiency, it's just obliterated. The unpredictability has been the really big issue. We just don't know when that truck's going to arrive. So what we would see in the past is the truck would go up, would drop its load, would go to another point, pick up a load, it's called a reload, or they reload the truck or whatever it may be, and back it would come. That's all gone because we just don't know. So we can't dispatch a vehicle to meet a vehicle because we don't know if that vehicle that's coming is going to take 12 hours. Sometimes it takes 18. Sometimes it takes 6. We just have no friggin' clue. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really hampered the chain. And at the end of the day, if and when we get back to a place, and we will, I mean, we've heard from the ministry that Coquihalla will be reopened in some temporary form, by the end of January is the goal, which is just stunning, the work that's being done.
Right.
But what that means is even if we get to a point where we get some predictability back and maybe we get the time penalty from, right now it's anywhere from 150 to 200% penalty. Going across the United States takes 3 times as long, but at least you get there. Because what's happening there, just so you know, is a lot of carriers are avoiding State Route 2, because State Route 2 looks an awful lot like our Route 3. They just go all the way down to I-90. The maintenance is way better. It's way safer to run. So even if we get there, if we're only impacted by 50%, so instead of it taking 6 hours, it takes 9. The really rough back of a napkin math tells us we're going to need half again as many trucks and half again as many drivers. We don't have them, Russ.
Yeah.
They don't exist. The drivers don't exist, and even if I can train the drivers, I can't buy trucks.
Right.
With the COVID-related supply chain problems and the semiconductor shortages, all our manufacturers are not going to hit their targets for 2022. They're already behind in 21. It's the perfect storm. It's going to be a really hard road to dig out of.
Tell me a bit about, because I know this was an issue even before any of this, even before COVID, even before, the highways, just finding drivers and vehicles and things to keep the networks going. Tell me about how maybe this highlights, because I think a lot of people don't even think about how they get their stuff. They just go to the store and buy it. Tell me a bit about how this has maybe put a highlight on, the highway infrastructure and, the transportation infrastructure, rail, and obviously trucking, things like that.
Yeah, I think people are starting to get a sense of how interconnected and dependent we are. Robin Sylvester, when he was making his remarks at the Port's annual general meeting, said it really well. He said, as we build back, we have to find a way to do more than and find a better balance between just in time and just in case.
Right.
So, and that really is going to be the trick as we go forward here. How much capacity can you create and establish? Because, anything that creates capacity creates cost.
Right.
And, how much are you and I, because it's you and I now, we're buying the stuff. Now, ultimately, I don't buy building supplies. Yeah, you do. You buy a house.
Yeah.
You buy an apartment.
You're paying for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything that moves, you and I pay for, ultimately. And we have to come to a rationalization and say, wow, what are we willing to pay to try and buttress our system so this doesn't happen? This doesn't happen again, both from an infrastructure standpoint and in a supply standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
There's no magic, in terms of finding people. We, like everybody, are in the glue. We were a little bit ahead of the curve because we didn't shut down during COVID, so we knew what we were seeing. We saw a loss of about 10% of commercial drivers right across Canada. They just hung it up. These were individuals that were in the retirement zone anyway, mid to late 60s, maybe early 60s, some of them in their 70s, and just looked at it and said, yeah, I'm done.
Wow, just turbocharged that trend.
Yep, it did. That's exactly it. So we saw that. We saw demand come back. And like I said, we were kind of the canary in the coal mine, if you will, in terms of the big picture shortage. Just finding people. So we're working with the government on programs to help with funding for training. Mm-hmm. We're hopeful those will come to some level of fruition in the next month or two. But it's a process. You can't just no commercial driver, no commercial company of any type of repute is going to hire somebody brand new, stuff them in a truck, and send them down Highway 3 today.
Right.
That's just not on. I mean, there's a whole process to go through. So like any type of profession, it takes time. And we've got a lot of work to do, to really be able to attract people to the industry, explain to them first and foremost that it is safe. Mm-hmm. And explain to them the diversity. It's not all long haul. In fact, long haul is the minority of it. Most drivers are home every night. It's just we've got a long way to go to help people understand that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels with the construction industry in terms of perception issues and also the lead time you need, because you can't just have a guy say, I want to be a welder and they just show up on the job site ready to go. It takes, a long time to get them to a point where they're, able to work safely. They have the skills. And so it takes a long time. And then also, I think construction has a perception issue where people think, oh, construction is for, dumb people who, or it's like you're going to get screamed at. It's, you're going to be cold and uncomfortable and it's horrible. I don't know. I think there's, do you think that there's some parallels with kind of some misconceptions people have about trucking and things you have to overcome? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. Before I joined BCTA, I actually worked for construction labor relations and did a lot of work in the labor force development field. So, when I got here, I was like, oh, yeah, I've seen this movie. So a driver that's home every night, I mean, we know from looking at our compensation surveys, they're going to make anywhere between 55 to 80 grand a year. If you want to be a tradesperson and work for a local school district or whatever it may be and be home every night, guess what you're going to make? Probably 60 to 80 grand a year. Yeah. If you want to make six figures, you're going to have to go work remotely, fly in, fly out, work 20 days in a row, blah, 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 blah. Same thing with trucking. You're going to have to drive across the country, work 6 days in a row, get 1 day off, drive back. Like, the parallels are extraordinary. And we suffer from the same issue in terms of perception and not communicating that well, saying to people, look, you want to stay local? You'll make 30-something bucks an hour driving a cement truck. You're home every night. You're here every day. Like, you're not going anywhere. You're great. I mean, if you want to make $10,000 a month, then you're going to have to do some team driving, and you're going to go to sleep in the cabin. You're going to wake up somewhere 1,000 kilometers from where you were and you went to sleep. That's how it works. Right. It's the same as if I can fly into sightseeing. Sure. I'm not going to see my family and friends and everything else. I'm in a remote camp, but they're compensating me for it. So the parallels are absolutely extraordinary.
What are some ways that you think, the industry and maybe government as well can do a better job of, attracting people and making sure that, the capacity is built, in the coming years? Because like you said, it's not something that can happen overnight. It's something that, you have to start, yesterday.
Yep. We own it. The industry, in my view, owns it. And I'm happy to say the Canadian Trucking Alliance, which is our federal association of associations, if you will, we were all set to press go on our image and recruitment campaign in March of 2020. Well, something else happened. So
oh, wow.
Right. And I'm like, literally, we'd done the research, we had it all set to go, and we had to hit pause. We're going to hit go this month. And really start to push it out in the next year. Because, this is something we have to do. It's like any industry. Like, you think about construction. When you work in construction at a heavy industrial site or a significant heavy construction, a road building site, the safety protocols are extraordinary. The care and attention that's paid to it and how they take care of people is wonderful. You start working in stick-build construction in the residential sector, not so much, man. It's the same here. We have carriers that have thousands of trucks. They run on telematics, so they're speed limited. Drivers are rewarded for good behavior. So you manage your RPMs, manage your fuel consumption, manage your braking. All of those drivers are rewarded for that. They're not penalized because, hey, it took you 20 minutes longer to get here. Right. They're like, no. Like, you're recognizing you're operating safely. Those are the leading companies. The difficulty we have is it's such a fractured industry. It's full of independent operators, small companies, marginal players, who are out there and skirting around the edges. When I met with my first ministerial meeting when I got here was with Minister Eby, and it was the same day he announced the ICBC dumpster fire. So he was a little distracted, and we're about 10 minutes in. He says, "Wait a minute, I gotta ask." He says, "Is it okay?" He says, "So you're a business association?" "Yeah." "You represent companies?" "Yeah." "And you're telling me we need to step up enforcement and have stricter regulations?" "Yep." He said, "Pardon me, but I'm not used to this." I said, "Minister, that tells you where we're at. Like, we're coming to you saying, please put these things in place. Raise the floor. really try and make sure that those people that are operating safely. Something that we've been asking for more than a decade are speed limiters. And we've said, put them on. The big fleets, they all run them because they get lower insurance rates because your trucks, and you'll see the placards on back. This vehicle is limited to 90 kilometers an hour.
So the good companies, they already do that no matter what.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they save a pile of dough.
Yeah.
And I mean, they take care of their people. Like, there's really good companies out there. The problem is we've got too many ones that just aren't paying attention to that.
Mm-hmm. And you have like these proven, it's not like these things they're proven. Like you said, there's companies that already implement these things. So why not make everybody do them because they're proven to work?
Oh, and we can tell you, Ontario brought in speed limiters back in 2008, and they got into all kinds of litigation. And ultimately, their ministry did a study in 2017 that looked at this and said, okay, years on, what did we find by putting in speed limiters?
Mm-hmm.
And what they found was for for accidents involving commercial vehicles, which not that many, and where the vehicle was at fault. And usually the commercial vehicle is not at fault. It's about 75-80% of the time it's the light vehicle. But where the commercial vehicle was at fault, accidents were reduced by 70%.
Wow.
Why am I having this conversation? Like, why aren't we already there? It is beyond frustrating.
Right.
And that's the type of thing that when we look to government, we say, look, we have to do a better job as an industry on a whole bunch of things. We need your help.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that the highways are safe. We need to make sure that these companies that these individuals can't make bad decisions.
Yeah.
There is no reason, and I mean, this is where I get into debates with the occasional driver that I talk with. Oh, you don't understand, I said, no, I don't. If you're telling me you got to run 140 kilometers an hour down a hill to come back up the other side, I will never understand that because you're putting yourself and everybody at risk because there is no possible way you can bring that thing under control.
Mm-hmm.
It's not physically possible. So cut it out, run safely. And
right.
In the most part, industry's behind it. Like, I do not understand government's reluctance. I just don't. But anyway, I'm on a rant.
Yes,
that's one thing. But from that supply chain piece, it is predictability is critical because that way we can design the network, we can design the logistics chain to have truck A there when truck B arrives.
Right.
Right now, man, your guess is as good as mine. Now, it's going to get better this week and next and the week after. And we always have some slack because of winter and that type of stuff, and that's fine. But the past few weeks have just been an absolute nightmare because we had no idea how we were going to get from A to B.
Yeah, I think I'm good to go. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's all good, Russ. Thanks very much for reaching out.
Yeah, thank you so much for making time for me. I really appreciate it. And I hope we can connect again at some point because I think there's a lot of interesting parallels and stories that I think I could work on that would involve trucking.
Totally, Russ. Love to have a conversation anytime.
Thanks for listening to the Construction Record Podcast. If you'd like to hear more episodes or if you'd like to listen to our Renew Top 100 Partnership Podcast, just go to journalofcommerce.com, dailycommercialnews.com, or Amazon Music, Apple Music, or Spotify. Thanks.